Hello and welcome to the fifth in this series of Gender Pay Gap Reports. My name is Michelle Jimmer. I'm the owner of Equality Pays, and I help firms close their gender pay gap. And in this series, I've taken a few reports at random, and I'm basically analysing the data in a very sort of top level way and looking at the action plans and giving a little bit more information or a few more tips on what they could do to make the action plan really stand out and to yield better results. So for this one, the fifth one in the series, I've gone for a completely different industry. This is the hospitality industry, and this one has around 400 employees. Now, looking at the data, quite interesting. The mean pay gap is 23%, median 10%. Not too bad, but obviously any pay gap is not brilliant. Bonus pay gaps, interesting. Mean is 15% and median is minus 1%. So that's the first one that I've looked at where there's been any minus in any of the calculations. Now, hospitality is different to the ones I looked at previously because it tends to be a much more female-dominated industry. However, as you can see, looking at the quartiles, we see the same story playing out, that even though there are more women, by looking at the quartiles, we can see that they are still clustered towards the lower and lower middle quartiles. And then as you move up, they tend to thin out. The numbers are not too bad. They could be better, but they are better than the ones we've seen in the male-dominated industries. So looking at this data, what does it tell us? Now, actually, what I should say, I didn't say at the beginning, is that when I looked at this one, it was interesting because there was no action plan. So I had nothing to go on. So it was about 4 or 5 pages, lots of detailed information about the data, what they thought the data was saying. And I got to the end and I had to reread it a few times to check, but there was actually no action plan, which I thought was a bit strange. Considering that they've gone to the effort to create a separate document to produce all of this data, because they could have just put the information on the website and left it at that. But I thought that it was a bit odd that they had decided not to put their action plan in. Now, I don't know why this is. It could be that they were simply running out of time and had to get this out in time so they didn't miss the fine. It may be that they didn't think that their figures were that bad, so they didn't need to explain what they were doing, or maybe they didn't see the importance in having an action plan. We'll never know what the reason for it was. So I had less to go on than I usually do. So I've essentially had to look at the data, which is only a snapshot of all of the information that they have. So I've looked at the data and come up with 3 things that I think that if they had an action plan, and they should have one internally anyway, these are 3 things that I would be looking at. So the first one is looking at what is called the sticky floor. And essentially, it's trying to identify, for this organization, which is a hotel, trying to identify, well, why is it that the point where women kind of stick and stay clustered is the lower middle? Is it because of a lack of flexibility in the quartile above? Is that something that's putting women off either applying for those roles, or they're applying for them and then being turned down because of no flexibility, or they're going for those roles, finding that they can't do it full time, asking for flexibility, being told no. It could be all of those things. It could be one of those things. Is it that promotions really only happen for people that work full time? So having that cluster of women that are in the lower 2 quartiles, I would be looking at, well, what is it that's keeping them stuck? It's not likely to be ambition. It's definitely not going to be that they're not good enough to move forward. It's probably more of a structural issue and probably more of a mindset issue. But without having any more information on this, I couldn't say what it was, but I would recommend that the organisation takes a look at that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is around part-time career paths. Now, I really have to question this, and I do, when I'm working with clients, this is something that I always ask them. to look at the career trajectory of people who work full-time versus people who work part-time or even have a job with any kind of flexibility. And I would definitely recommend that for this firm, especially with it being hospitality, it being a hotel. People work shift patterns. It's not uncommon for people to, work part-time within this sector, especially women, even though we know that men and women are both equally capable of looking after the children. It's still, at the moment, the kind of preserve of women to sacrifice some of their career in order to do that. So it's not unlikely that there will be lots of women that work part-time in this hotel. But what I would say is it would be useful for the organisation to do a comparison and look at the career journey of somebody who works full-time versus people that work part-time or with any kind of flexibility, to see if there's a pattern, because I suspect that there probably is. And it goes back to the first point around sticky floors and promotions and full-time workers. Because very often what happens is when somebody steps off the career ladder and shortens their hours, it also tends to shorten their career trajectory as well, their career journey. But in order for this hotel to kind of get to the level of the pay gap route, I would be doing that research. So looking to see, well, is there a pattern? Do we see that part-time workers or flexible workers tend not to, be able to go further? Why is that? Is that to do with bias and promotion? Is it to do with inflexible job design? Is it to do with the fact that, part-time senior roles are non-existent? They've never existed, so we're not going to look. What is it? So that is something that I think is very, very important, particularly because it's a hotel and it's very, very common for people to work part-time in that industry. And the fact that it only has around 400 employees means that even though this is a task, it's not too onerous. They could easily say, right, we're going to look at the career patterns of people that have worked with us for 3 years and people that have worked with us for 5 years, and we're going to look at full-time versus any other mode of working and see what the data brings up. I think it brings up some very, very interesting aspects, and also, and in doing that, interview your staff as well, ask questions. You'll get some rich data from them. And the third thing that I would suggest is to look at the experience of maternity returners. Again, because this is a hotel, very, very most likely to be female dominated, most likely to have people working in part-time capacity. But I would specifically look at maternity returners to see, are they falling out of the are they leaving the organisation? Are they struggling when they come back? Are there barriers that means that they aren't able to move up the ladder, so they're stuck in the lower quartile? Is the company feeling that those people are less ambitious and therefore not expecting them to move up forwards and not putting things in place that would help them to move forward? Essentially, are female staff trading career progression or flexibility? These are really real questions that I would encourage this organisation to ask and get answers to. Because again, I don't have an action plan to go on, and I don't know all of the information of what goes on in this organisation. But again, heavily female-dominated sector. Lots of people will work part-time, and I would imagine that a good chunk of those people probably work part-time after having children as well. So it's always good to try and find out, well, what is their experience of returning to work? Is this hotel doing what they can in terms of supporting people who have families that still want to progress their careers? And if they're not doing that, looking for ways to help make that happen, because these are the actions, these are the things that will help to close the pay gap. So I hope that you found this interesting, a little bit different to the previous ones I'd looked at before. So obviously come up with some new ideas of things that this organisation could do. If in listening to it you have seen something or heard something that you think would be pertinent to you or to your firm, and do you want to talk further about how I can help you in closing your pay gaps, then please do contact me. My details are on the screen and I would love to hear. Okay, bye for now.